Good morning, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to Bowling Green State University. My name is Harry Knight. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Division of Liquor Control. And this is the final day of quite a active roadshow group that we've been taking across the state over the last 2 weeks, meeting with respective folks from all of the agencies. And we want to try to bring folks up to date in regard to what's happening with the Liquor Modernization Project, as well as a number of other topics that we'll cover today during this presentation. We are filming this presentation. The folks from Bowling Green State University Media Group are filming this, and we're going to be using this to show afterwards on the agency training site. For those who have not been able to attend, everybody is giving me a talk louder. Okay, I got it. But bottom line is that we're going to be filming this today because there are some folks that obviously couldn't make it here to the event. So we want to make sure that we have everybody have an opportunity to see this moving forward. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of an overview as far as what we're going to talk about today. I also have some folks with us as part of our town hall team that I'd like to introduce as we start off today's activities. Greg Campbell is with us. Greg is the Senior Project Manager working directly with the Department of Administrative Services. And Greg has been actively involved in a number of projects for the state for a number of years. He's a key member of our leadership team. Spencer Wood is the Deputy CIO for the Department of Administrative Services. Again, Spencer is a key member of the leadership team for this project. Amanda Boros in the back, Sonny, is the Senior Project Manager from the Department of Commerce and works directly again with our project team and the Microsoft group that's working with us on this project. Jerry O'Neill is the Director of Agency Operations. Jerry, for those of you who don't know, remember Tom Kappa, who was in this role previously. So Jerry is the Director of Operations working directly for me in the Division of Liquor Control. Jennifer Richardson, who heads up our merchandising group. Jennifer is part of our merchandising team, also responsible for pricing, other elements. Many of you have probably talked to Jennifer on a regular basis in regard to product allocations and things of that nature. Matt Mullins. Matt is our communications manager for the Division of Liquor Control. We're happy to have him with us here today. I'm going to see Jason Yeager, one of our auditors that works for us. Aaron Wozniak, another one of the auditors that works directly with you folks. We've got some folks that were out in the hall. Lorraine Terry works for Jobs Ohio Beverage System. She's the stakeholder manager that works directly with stakeholder groups on the outside. And we have some other folks. Come right in. We have some folks here from our liaison outreach group. Ron Overturf is here. Ron Kohler is here. I know Ron was here earlier this morning. But they'll be in. They've been working with you folks in an outreach capacity. And so we're glad to have them with us here today as they've been helping us across the state. So as I indicated, this is the last day of our town hall tour. And so we're going to spend some time going through a presentation this morning. It'll be about 45 minutes of slides, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end. We're just going to tape the presentation itself, because that's the most important thing to be able to share with those that can't make it here today. So just as a point of reference, we'll be just filming the presentation part itself. So with that, let me cover the agenda. The leadership team, which we spoke about just now. We'll talk about the state of business in 2016 and where we are year-to-date 2017. We'll talk a little bit about Jobs Ohio and Jobs Ohio Beverage System. Most of you probably understand the relationship and where Jobs Ohio comes into play as it relates to the liquor enterprise, but we want to make sure that there's a little bit of clarity in regard to that relationship. We'll talk about the Liquor Modernization Project status, the next steps and milestones, communications and customer service initiative. Some of these things for those of you that had an opportunity to attend the webinar. How many folks had an opportunity to attend the webinar? So some of this information has been kind of lifted from that, but we'll expand on that information a little bit. So customer service initiative and communications. Warehouse inventory reduction. A lot of questions have come forth and all of the respective town hall events we've had so far, so we'll spend some time talking about that. The warehouse and distribution center update, the retail and wholesale terminal solution, and then a shelf price update. So that's the agenda. It's a few slides for each of those respective agenda items. Again, we're not talking a 100 slide presentation. We're going to kind of walk you through a couple of slides on each of those. And then we'll have the Q&A as I indicated at the end. So we've covered the primary leadership team. Let me just give you a little background on myself. I spent 30 years with Anheuser-Busch, and I retired from Anheuser-Busch in 2008 when InBev purchased the company. And then I spent a little time working for the Kroger operation. I was one of the senior folks in the supply chain group and had responsibility for the distribution center in Delaware, Ohio, a 1 million square foot distribution center that services approximately 260 plus stores in a tri-state, primarily a tri-state region. So I spent some time with Kroger and retired from Kroger in 2013. And then in the mid part of 2015, around the May time period, I was contacted by the state. They had created a position and they were looking for someone to come in and try to help supplement and drive some improvements, if you will, given the situation that we've encountered here within the last year with the initial rollout. So the timing of that is such that I came on board in September of 2015. So just recently passed a 1-year anniversary, if you will, with the state in this particular position. I report directly to the Director of Commerce, Bruce Stevenson, the superintendent, who actually retired a few days ago. He and I were, there was not a reporting structure there. Bruce primarily, again, the superintendent duties, and I was reporting directly to the Director of Commerce, and I still do. So let's talk a little bit about Jobs Ohio. Governor Kasich privatized the business development, job growth portion of the state a few years ago, and it was privatized and it formed the Jobs Ohio company. And it's a nonprofit company that's committed to driving job growth, business development, sustainment on any number of different levels. And within Jobs Ohio, there is a subsidiary, and it's called Jobs Ohio Beverage System, which, a little confusing, but Jobs Ohio Beverage System is the group that we support, and they are the ones that have a 25-year contract, and the business and/or the profits that come from the liquor sales here in the state are used to fund Jobs Ohio and all of the efforts and the initiatives that they bring forth in terms of job sustainment, growth, business development, et cetera. So it's spirituous liquor, it's not beer and wine, and that's how the Jobs Ohio Beverage System supports and also funds Jobs Ohio. A little bit of the development success, over 23,000 new jobs, 54,000 retained, and $6.7 billion in capital investment. So that's a little background on Jobs Ohio and Jobs Ohio Beverage System. Talk a little bit about the state of the business. If you look at last year's total bottle sales, over 59 million total bottle sales for the year, which was up over almost 5%. Total dollar sales over $1 billion, the first time that we had ever crossed that threshold for $1 billion. And then total sales, fiscal year 2017, $181 million. Now, for those of you that don't know, as we're on a fiscal period, our fiscal period begins July 1 each year. So as of July 1st this year of 2016, that began the 2017 fiscal period. So the numbers you see there with $181 million, that's actually just for sales in July and August. September's, at the time we went to press with putting together this presentation, we didn't have September numbers, but we will be updating that as we go for future presentations. A little bit of information that Jennifer Richardson provided for us. Tequila in Ohio is still outpacing the national average. The Patron and other high-end brands show double-digit growth as does the small batch whiskeys continue to show double-digit growth. Vodka, Tito's Vodka is outpacing other vodka in Ohio. Again, double-digit growth. These are things that are probably not new to you. Cognac, Hennessy, and some of the other high-end brands are showing double-digit growth. And then also Jameson is showing double-digit growth as well. Liquor modernization project, we're going to talk about current status, next steps, and milestones. So the liquor modernization phase 2 objectives, our platform is a Microsoft Dynamics AX. And we are moving forward in phase 2 with an out-of-the-box solution with minimal customization. Now, when we go back and talk about last year, as painful as it is at times for us to talk about last year, and quite frankly, we're still living with a lot of the issues that came about from last year's rollout. We know that a lot of that was driven with the best intentions, but it was a very, very poor rollout in the sense that we had a tremendous amount of customization, and that has created some significant issues with us that we're still having to deal with today. I'm not going to dance around it. It's very plain. It's very easy to see. Every one of you in here, every one of my team, we're all still living with a very difficult situation, and it has to do with a lot of the customization that was not executed properly, and so we're still having to kind of pay for that as we go down the road today. And we will not be able to correct that. Correct that meaning where we are going with phase 2 is not a fixing of the existing system. There are elements of this system that we are in right now that cannot be fixed. So therefore, when you hear phase 2, just want you to understand that we're not attempting to try to put a Band-Aid on the 1.0 situation that we are in right now. We are rolling out a phase 2 Microsoft Dynamics AX that will be an out-of-the-box with minimal customization. We know we will have to have some customization to meet certain business requirements on both our end as well as your end. But we're going to try to minimize that as best we can, okay? Standardized platform supports the enterprise as we move forward to the future. Again, we're not looking for something to just kind of get us through the year or the next year. We have to bring forth a system that can support where we see and where the trends and where the projections are showing that will support this enterprise for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 years. We all know that technology changes very, very rapidly, okay? But again, don't be misled by being described as out of the box as it being just a generic implementation of a program to support our business. We have to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success for the future. It's going to provide near real-time transaction reporting. It's also going to provide near real-time inventory visibility, which inventory is a very significant issue. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 150 times. It doesn't mean that I don't take it to heart. I understand very clearly the impact around inventories out in the field right now. So again, that's something that we take very seriously, and as we move forward, we will have a much better and a near real-time visibility to that, as well as a wholly integrated system view. So those are the objectives. Those are the objectives of phase 2 of the liquor modernization project. Just a little bit of a general, kind of show you where we are from a timeline perspective. Let me back up for a minute. We have folks with us from Microsoft that are working with our subject matter experts, and many of us who are in this room today, working every day of the week at the Rhodes Tower in downtown Columbus. We have probably 40 people in total, comprised from Microsoft, Department of Commerce, Liquor Control, Department of Administrative Services, our IT group, all working together, approximately 40 people on the 20th floor at the Rhodes Tower. So this is a very, very comprehensive and concerted effort on the part of many groups. And so we're all working together downtown on this project. The analysis was complete in the first quarter. Whoops, excuse me. The analysis was complete in the first quarter. Design phase was completed in the second quarter. Development late quarter 2, early 3. Right now we're in the testing phase. Testing meaning that we're going through looking at all the identified business processes for all the respective work stream areas, retail, warehouse, inventory, fiscal. We're looking at all of those, ensuring that we've got proper reports available in the system, proper SOPs being written and validated in terms of how we utilize this going forward, which will, again, drive the training that we will do when we go out and do our training. The training will begin in the first quarter of 17, with a target implementation around April of 2017. So that's the present timeline in terms of where we are with our milestones. There's some things that we're looking at to try to measure the agency readiness. Again, those of you that had an opportunity to attend the webinar, that was the first time that we had anything of that nature. And quite frankly, we got a lot of positive feedback because it gave many of the agency folks the opportunity to kind of get familiar and dial in and at least have some communication means with us in a real-time basis without having to necessarily leave and travel and come out, because everybody has a busy schedule, obviously, they're working within. So we're going to continue to do webinar activities as we move forward, up to and including, we may even be doing one as early as next week when we get to the retail solutions part of this presentation. We are working to try to see if we can put one together next week that'll be specifically tailored to talk about retail solutions. The first one we had was a little broad-based, covered a number of different topics like we're doing today. But as we go forward, we'll look for opportunities to maybe make those more specific as we go into the future. Looking at the attendance and the feedback from the town hall and roadshow events, we've had very good turnout, and we've had very good feedback from these events. Some of the feedback's kind of hard to take, okay? I understand that. But again, what's important for us is to be able to get out in front of you and try to be able to answer those questions and bring forth information that keeps you up to date as best as possible, so as you continue to run your business, you know where we are, what the timing is associated with this project, and what the deliverables need to be, and then where we're going to go as we move further down the road. We'll need the submission of the retail sales integration decision. When we talk today about the retail solutions, there's a timeline associated with where we'll need the agencies to get back to us as far as what solution path they want to take, okay? The completion of a Wi-Fi assessment and installation, with all of the efforts and such that we are going forth with right now, I've heard on a number of instances that we've got just connectivity issues in some of the agencies. So we'll be doing an assessment there to make sure that as we roll out this project, phase 2, that we're not going to have something like a connectivity issue create havoc for us after we begun a rollout phase. So we're going to be doing an assessment and installation and update where needed. The installation of the wholesale and retail sales terminal hardware, which we'll talk about in a bit, and then the completion of all the stakeholder training activities. Training in the form of for agency personnel, for the auditors, for some of the suppliers, for some of my internal folks, for any number of different groups. So we've got a very comprehensive training plan that we'll be rolling out here to support this rollout. So some of the upcoming key LMP dates and events. October 20th, the communications to the agencies, that's when we had the webinar. October 24th, 2016, that was the technical document published to the agencies. The technical document is a document that has been sent out to all the agencies, and that would be what you would need to share with your existing provider if you decide to integrate and retain your existing point of sale or retail equipment that you have in your agencies right now. And so just as a point of note, please, if you have not received this document, if the technical document has not come to you, please make sure before you leave today that you see Matt Mullins or Lorraine Terry, and make sure that we have your right email address, because it was sent out well over a week ago. And again, this is the roadmap and guide that if you choose to integrate with your existing, you'll need to have this information and share it with your provider, okay? Town hall meetings across all 4 districts. Last week, we did 2 in Columbus, 1 in Hocking, 2 in Cincinnati, 2 in Cleveland, Youngstown, Canton. Today we're here in Bowling Green, and we finish up in Troy this afternoon. And so this has been our first effort, an initiative to do this, because quite frankly, one of the things that I asked folks when I came on board probably a year ago, I sat around and I asked folks, I said, well, what kind of activities do we have where we engage the agencies? When's the last time we went out and talked to the agencies? Have we ever had folks from the agencies come in? Do we have any committees that any of the agencies are involved in? And when I asked those questions of the people that were sitting around the table, I got no response. And so that in itself was a bit concerning to me from my perspective, and what's important to me is to recognize that you've got 466 agencies across the state, and it doesn't appear that we've had any kind of active communication effort and or initiative to engage with the folks in these agencies. So understand very clearly that that is a significant piece of who I am in terms of what we're going to do as we move forward. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit when I talk about the Agency Representative Committee. December 1 is the deadline for you to submit your retail sales solution decision back to us. And also in December, we'll have to go through the procurement process for those of you that will opt to take the second option on a retail solution, which is a Clover device. Clover is a brand name, and we'll speak to this more specifically in a bit. But that'll also be when we have to procure the Clover devices for the agencies that choose to go that direction. February through March of 17 is the installation of the Clover retail devices in the stores and agencies. Training sessions will begin. And then April, we're going to have a ready date for the agencies integrating with the web API solution, along with the warehouse/distribution or bailment center consolidation complete. And we'll talk a little bit about our warehouse plans here in another couple of slides, with the cutover occurring April and May of 2017. So those are the upcoming key LMP dates and events. Let's talk a little bit about communications and customer service initiative. Many of you in here, if not all of you, have met or had opportunity for some engagement with our liaison group. And when you consider the depth and the breadth of the number of agencies across this state, that's a pretty tall order to be able to get out and engage and talk to all of these respective agencies. So this group has been working with us to help facilitate and meet directly with you folks on a semi-regular basis. They'll be going back out again starting sometime next week. And so it was very important for them to be able to be a conduit and help communicate information out and bring information back to me and my team as we're going through this project. And this will be an ongoing process as we go through the entire liquor modernization project itself. Ron Kohler has been working in the Toledo area, so a lot of you probably have met and know Ron. Jen Tate has the Cleveland area. Columbus has been Luke Paglianetti, and Cincinnati was Kevin Myers. So they've done a really yeoman's job getting out in front of the agencies, and I think the actual visits were almost about 455 that they've actually been able to reach in their first wave of activities. So they'll continue to do this as we move forward. And again, they are a good conduit of information coming back from the agencies. And just as another element of insight, I sit down along with my team members with that group on a regular basis and get feedback sessions. I understand what's communicated back through them by the agencies. I can't tell you that there's a lot of things that surprise me. It grounds me. It makes me aware and understand very clearly, a lot of the things that are going on in the agencies today, the feelings that people still have about the difficult times we live in. So rest assured, it's important for me to get that feedback, and I understand it very clearly, and it also provides the guide and the roadmap for what we need to do to get ourselves back on track. So they'll continue to be a very integral part of our communications team with the next round of visits starting in early November. Agency Representative Committee. So the purpose of this will be, it's just important when you've got so many folks that are part of this entire enterprise that you've got some ways or means to engage them and understand from their perspective what's happening in the business. Along the way, the fact that we've got some very talented folks in merchandising, product selection, support from suppliers and such, but the one thing that's been very apparent is that we haven't taken advantage, and I mean that in a positive sense, of the expertise and the insight of the folks at the agencies. So, purpose of the committee, understanding operations. Talk about the things that are working well, share some best practices, what's working well, what's not working well. Product sales and selection insight. Nobody can tell me any better what's happening at your agency than you. You know your customers, you know your clientele, you know what's moving. Now, we do, as a control state, we do make the decisions as to what comes into the state. That's part of the nature and responsibility that we have. And the superintendent is the one who ultimately signs off on any product in the spirituous liquor that comes here to the state. But we still want to be able to, as we move forward, to utilize the feedback and the insight from the agencies. So that'll be a very key part of this committee. Development and execution of responsible growth initiatives. We have to be stewards of responsible growth. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. And then working on improving the Department of Liquor Control and the agency relationship. It won't happen overnight. I understand that. But understand very clearly that that's an expectation of mine, and we're going to move forward with initiatives to make that happen. The benefits, more open dialogue opportunities, best practices, outreach programs, just general communications from any of them, and understanding a lot of things about products and categories. Again, I think we've missed a real opportunity to take advantage of the insight that you folks have as agency operators and know what products are moving and what's not moving. The member structure, there'll be statewide district groups. So if we look at 4 groups or 4 districts right now, I would say probably 4 to 6 members from each district. We would probably have quarterly meetings in which we would come to your district. And then at least once a year, we bring everybody together in Columbus for a day-long session to talk about and expand upon the things that have come out from the respective district meetings that we would be attending. This is not a governing committee, okay? But this is an insight operations committee that we need to make sure that we are understanding and have our finger on the pulse of the agencies in terms of what's happening good, what's not really happening very good, and the things that we can strategize as we move forward to make it better for all of us. It'll be a cross-section of agency size and complexity. A larger agency is not going to have any better opportunity to be part of this than someone who has a very small agency. And then the members are going to be selected by me. And they're going to be selected by me, feedback from you folks who have expressed an interest during these sessions, meaning you send me an email, you talk to me afterwards, you talk to your auditor, you talk to your liaison personnel, and expressing an interest and want to come on board. One of the things that I try to tell folks is that, you know, part of the price of admission for this is don't come to me with problems, come to me with problems and solutions so I can understand it better, but also how can you work with us and how can you help us as we get better down the road? Because I think all of us have identified there's a significant number of problems, but what we have to be able to do as we work forward is come up with a way collectively for us to put those aside and or repair those problems and then move forward with the important strategies about how to develop our business. So that's a little bit about the Agency Representative Committee. I would expect to see that probably another 6 months before we really kind of get that up and going. It doesn't mean that we will not entertain, you know, requests or feedback from folks who have an interest to be involved in that. And if you're not selected as part of that, understand that I can't have everybody on it. At the same time, I want to make sure that everybody understands that I take it very seriously when somebody does offer that up, meaning that it does mean a lot to me, and I want to make sure that I recognize those individuals who are willing to step up and be part of a committee like this, because it's the first time it's ever been done. And in my mind, it's the right thing to do. A little bit about customer service and call center operations. We covered this in the webinar. We do have a new customer service center. It's in operation. It's the same phone number that you use today. There is a new email that you can see on the screen that we also utilize. Representatives are available 24/7, 365. And the calls are going to be assigned priority based on content and responded to within a very designated time frame period. Now, Jerry O'Neill and the operations team have worked very actively in providing information and clarity to the folks that are the initial recipients of the call. In other words, the call center folks that initially take this call will be able to disseminate this information and or call to the appropriate person to make sure that we get a timely response back to it, and also make sure that the person that is ultimately responding to it is the right person. It's really not going to benefit you at all if a call is directed to me on a technical problem you're experiencing, because I'm not a technical person. But we've provided information to the customer service center representatives so they know who the individuals are, what their specific field of discipline and expertise is, and then we'll make provisions to get that information to them once that call or email comes in to the customer service center. So that's an ongoing process. We've been using that now for a couple of weeks. It's still in the developmental stage, but we also want to make sure everybody understands that depending on the nature of the call, that it'll receive a certain priority. If somebody calls and says, I'm down, I can't get on the portal, I can't process any orders, that's going to be a priority one, no-brainer. If somebody is experiencing an issue with maybe a password reset, not to say that's not important, but that may not receive the same priority rating in terms of the turnaround and response back as a situation where somebody's got an inability to process anything to run their business. So that's an ongoing process. It's been in existence, and so if you have not used that, again, the number is the same, and then that's the email that you can utilize for that. So let's talk about warehouse inventory reduction strategy. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Right now, we've probably got over 3,000 products in our portfolio in the state of Ohio. And when you look at the other control states, we're probably in the middle. In other words, there's some that have more, there's some that have not quite as many. But another piece of information is that over the past 3 years, we've introduced over 800 new products into the portfolio. We have not taken any out. Now that in itself does not necessarily create a problem, because to bring one in, you don't have to automatically remove one in order to do that. That's not the way that works. But one of the things that we have seen, and we are seeing it still to this day, is that we have a very high congestion of inventory of products that are not moving in both the agencies and our warehouses right now. And as we're prepping ourselves for this cutover, which will occur in April of 17, we need to make sure that we have got product in our warehouses and in our agencies that is an actively moving product as opposed to something that's just sitting and gathering dust. Okay, so that's a little bit of the backstory on where we started in terms of how we have determined where we're going to go and how we're going to do this. If you look at the number of products that I'm referring to that fall under this warehouse inventory reduction list, the average days of inventory in your agencies to this day on those products is anywhere from 250 to over, in some cases, a year's worth of inventory based on sales. Now, it doesn't make really good business sense to keep that product in the warehouse. It doesn't really make good business sense to keep bringing that product into the agencies when you've got 250 to 300 plus days of inventory of that across the state. So we had to go through a process, and it was a very comprehensive one. Jennifer Richardson, with representatives from the supplier groups, with Chelsea Howard, who is the director, Jobs Ohio Beverage System, did a very detailed analysis of these products, and again, with the involvement of the suppliers. And so, very honestly, I've never met too many suppliers that willingly want to have a product taken off the shelf. I think everybody can probably understand that. But we sat down and looked at those products, and after that review, there's approximately 700 of those that are going to be removed from the warehouse. Okay? Now, what about what's out in the field? Or what about I still have a particular customer that wants some of this product? Well, rather than continue to purchase it and move it into the agencies from the warehouse, we're going to utilize what we have in the field. Transfers, working with the allocation clerks, calling Armando or Beth, Bill Nicolopoulos. In some instances, if you need to get to Jennifer or myself or even Jerry, for that matter. So we want to try to, in a controlled manner, take advantage of what we've already purchased and owned in the state versus continuing to pull it in from the warehouse. So, if the sales dictate, if something changes, and all of a sudden something begins to skyrocket, these things aren't finite. We can change that, but we don't want to bring any more in when you're not selling it, very honestly. We're also going to suspend new product listing until the first part of 17. The process that we use for listing, the suppliers will come in on a regular basis, pitch their new product, say they want to go to X number of agencies, they're going to spend X amount of dollars to promote the product, so on and so forth. That will continue, but we're going to have them be a little more front-end proactive, send us the information at the Division of Liquor Control, let us look at those products on a more regular basis, and then we will bring the supplier in if we so choose to move down the path of new products. When I say new product listing is suspended until the first quarter of 17, it doesn't mean that a special product, new product, holiday package or something, we're not going to ignore that piece of our business. Okay, but as far as the regular listing process and schedules, we'll be bringing that back on board probably in the first quarter of 17. Still working, Jennifer and her team are working on the listing and delisting process as far as making sure that we have a best practice approach, utilizing some of the feedback and some of the data that we get from our association with NAPCO, which is the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association. That's an organization that represents all the control states here in the United States. It's been in existence since right after Prohibition, and they provide a wealth of information, sales, best practices, operations, listing procedures, delisting procedures, legislative issues. They provide a substantive amount of information for us. And so I've had the opportunity to be asked to be on the board, so I have a chance to engage with those folks and again, try to capitalize on a lot of things that are happening in some of the other states that we could potentially apply here in the state of Ohio. So again, they can be a wealth of information and a great resource to us, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward. Warehouse Transportation Optimization Initiative. Right now, we've got 4 warehouses, Cincinnati, Toledo, Cleveland, and Columbus. And we're going to be consolidating and or moving from 4 to 2. And those locations will be Cleveland and Columbus. If you look at the warehouse operations right now, and this is one of the things that we've put a very, what I would call critical eye and analysis on since in the time that I've been here. And with Jerry O'Neill, who's the Director of Agency Operations, and Amanda Boros, Sonny Boros, what I didn't tell you is that both Jerry and Sonny worked with me at Anheuser-Busch. And we were both all 3 of us were very actively involved in the supply chain elements of that business. And so we may not be the top end experts, but we've got a significant amount of understanding and experience in this part of our business. And one of the things that we've seen since we've been here is that we don't have in today's warehousing and transportation operation a good set of robust, what we would call KPIs. That stands for Key Process Indicator. So we don't really have anything in place that measures the performance of that warehouse and that transportation group. Now, just as a point of note, the Division of Liquor Control does not hold those contracts, okay? That's Jobs Ohio, but we are very actively involved, and as we are moving forward with potentially new providers that would run these warehouses, we are neck deep in making sure that we've got identified KPIs to ensure that these warehouses are going to meet our expectations, but more importantly, your expectations. Timeliness of delivery, accuracy of delivery, pick accuracy when an order picker is picking the product to send to you, turnaround time, inventory adjustments, inventory accuracy, process loss. All of these elements are going to be built in to these requirements as we move forward with potentially a new warehouse provider or providers. So rest comfortably in knowing that we've got a very active group and a very, very strong level of expertise in this line of the business, because quite frankly, we know that we need some improvements there. As we move forward with this, Jobs Ohio will continue to hold the contracts. They'll continue to hold the contracts for this warehouse operation. The provider, the third-party logistics person who actually runs the warehouse, will also be responsible for the transportation as well. But again, we, meaning Jobs Ohio, will hold a contract and the lease to the buildings. We're not building new buildings, we're going to existing buildings. But Jobs Ohio will hold that. Jobs Ohio Beverage System will hold those contracts. It'll improve the inventory accuracy and availability. It'll streamline the enterprise warehouse business processes, and also we target cutover date is April of 2017. Retail and wholesale terminal solutions. We spoke to this a little bit earlier in terms of the different solution or options that are going to be provided to you. So let's talk a little bit about that. All of the terminals are going to have to be able to integrate with Microsoft Dynamics AX. That's a given. We know that you have to be able to interface with that when Phase 2 launches. The ability for us to have a much better, much more accurate inventory is critically important. The transaction level detail that we will need as we move forward, that you will need and we will need, is a driving factor of our strategy in terms of what we're going to be providing. Transaction level detail, improvements to the current business processes, and then quite frankly, it's going to be an upgrade in technology for some of the folks that may be even in this room here today. And we realize that, but there's an element of this enterprise, I think it's important to remember that with technology changing the way that it does, but also at the same time with the growth of this enterprise and the way that it is continuing to demonstrate positive growth, that we have to move forward and have an operating system and support mechanism in place to enable us to do the business the way that we need to do the business. So that's the kind of the preamble for where we're going to go in terms of the solutions that we're going to be offering. So just in a very high level, the integration options that we have is the first one would be integrating with your existing hardware that you presently have. In order to do that, you're going to have to use your existing provider support to do that. And when most of you probably are aware that last summer we called every single agency, and some on a couple times, to make sure we understood exactly what is your point of sale or what does your hardware system look like? Who is your provider? What kind of equipment do you have? So we went through a very comprehensive, knuckle down calls to the agencies and still have a list of all of this information. And it was very enlightening. I have to tell you, it was enlightening to the point to where it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we've got these many providers that are working with all these folks at these agencies. Quite frankly, we should have known it, but we didn't. So now we do. So you can integrate your existing retail terminal, or you can use a new Clover terminal that'll be configured and provided by the enterprise. And Clover, just as a point of note, is a brand name, okay? and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Clover terminal here in a couple of minutes. So those are the two options. So how to make your choice. Let's look at the option 1 column. The benefits of continuing to use your existing one is obviously you're familiar with it. It's running your system at this point in time. It may be running satisfactorily to your expectations. And of course, you can continue to use whoever your existing provider is as support for the ongoing effort. There will be some IT costs to integrate. That will be information, obviously, that you would have to get in terms of communicating with your provider once he or she has seen the technical document and gives you feedback on what this will cost in order to do that. And again, the cost will integrate, will be based on various levels of your technology, and then of course you've got your ongoing support costs. So whoever your provider is today, I'm sure a number of you probably have a contract of some sort with those folks, and there's a services agreement or such that you probably have with them today in today's world. Okay, so that's option 1. Option 2, you can use the new Clover terminal that'll be configured and provided to you by the enterprise. There will not be any setup needed for the integration to the Microsoft Dynamics AX platform. It'll be configured right out of the box, and it will be installed by a vendor that we will provide. The terminal can read chip cards. I think we're at a point in time now where everybody understands where we're going in the chip card requirement that we have in today's business. So it'll have the ability to do that. It can be used for non-liquor items. Now you will have to potentially integrate your non-liquor items into that if you so choose to do that. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a couple minutes. It'll have apps that help you run your business, and it's going to be a reduced merchant services fees available. We'll talk a little bit about that. I guess the best way to talk about that is that we are working directly with a group and trying to, what I would call, procure the best rates possible. Some of the feedback we've gotten from some of the folks is they were questioning as to whether or not the rates that we would be coming forth with would be competitive against what they presently have. We'll have some dialogue about that a little later on when we get into the Q&A period. As far as the considerations, setup would be required to add the non-liquor items. The process is easy, and tutorials are available. There are multiple tutorials on YouTube from the company that has the Clover unit. And so there's a lot of information out there available already that can walk folks through a process of how to integrate elements into those units. The costs, there's no cost for the terminals or installations. Okay, so that cost will be incurred by the enterprise. And the liquor enterprise will also be paying the monthly support fees for 2 years if you choose to go with the Clover solution that we are providing. So whatever that ends up being on a monthly basis, $50 to $80, again, that's kind of an approximate cost, but the enterprise will pick up those costs for a 2-year period if you choose to go with the Clover solution. This is just a picture of the Clover terminal itself. Again, you can go online and get some information. And as I said earlier in the presentation, we are looking, based on some feedback that we've gotten from a couple of the town hall events so far, we are looking to try to have a webinar with someone specifically from the Clover group as early as potentially next week. So when we wrap up the final town halls today and we get back into the office tomorrow, we're going to be aggressively working and looking to see if we can put something together that will give anyone who has an interest in wanting to get online through a webinar session with someone from Clover. So that'll be, coming soon to a webinar near you, and we'll communicate that back to you. So the retail terminal solutions, the Clover terminals are provided for the retail sales. The enterprise will give you the number of terminals based on the more recent terminal audit. If you've got 3 terminals that you presently use for liquor and you choose the Clover, we're going to provide you 3 terminals. If you've got 4 and you use them all for liquor, we're going to give you 4. Okay. Some folks have asked, well, if I want another one because I want to use it for non-liquor items, we can help with the procurement of that, but that would be on your cost. And some of the costs that we've heard as far as us negotiating for these clover units, I think it's a fair statement to say that the clover unit themselves is right around $1,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So again, if you have an interest in wanting to have an additional one because of non-liquor items, we will try to help facilitate that, just to kind of give you a ballpark as to what that would cost. You own these. Once you take these, you own them. Now, again, we pay the 2 years of support. After that, whatever that is required, and most of that is licensing, I think, if I'm saying that correctly, that would come on your cost after the 2-year period. If something happens to the unit after the 2-year period, that's your responsibility to take care of getting another one or whatever the case may be, okay? So some of the key milestone dates, October 24th is when we set out the technical document, and I can't stress enough the importance of making sure that you receive that technical document and and providing that and engaging your existing provider to make sure that he or she is looking at it if you choose the pathway of staying and integrating with your existing system, you'll need that. December 1 is the decision is due back to us which direction you're taking. First quarter of 17, the tests for the integrations will begin, and obviously in April all the changes are complete and we go live. If you go with Clover, again, the decision is still December 1. The terminal installation begins in the first quarter of 17, and again, we'll provide a vendor at no cost to you to help set it up and fully configure the terminals in your agencies. Okay, so let's forget retail for a moment. How many of you have wholesale accounts? Okay, so quite a few of you. The agency is going to provide a separate terminal for you for your wholesale business. Regardless of what direction you go on the retail solution, even if you choose to integrate with your existing system, we're still going to provide you, at no cost, a wholesale terminal that'll directly interface with the AX system, okay? It'll be for wholesaler order processing only. The configured hardware will be incorporated. It'll give you transaction level data, and it will be a much increased efficiency and effectiveness, if you will, in the processing and system response time. So regardless, again, what solution you go on the retail side, we will be providing a wholesale terminal for the wholesale business. So I want to kind of switch gears for a minute and talk a little bit about price without tax, single shelf price, and the nickel rounding process. I think it was early 2000, 2002, 2003, there was a rule change put into place where anybody who purchases a bottle of liquor, the total price of that incorporates what is called a nickel rounding function or feature. And the easiest way or the simplest way for me to describe it, and I think probably most of you know it, but I'll describe it anyhow, is if the retail price of a bottle is $19.76. Then in today's world, that $19.76 is rounded up to the nearest nickel, which means that it actually would be $19.80. That's in existence today. It's been in existence. It's in your system. It's automatically processed and calculated. And so that's been in existence since the early part of 2003. That rule is changing. It's going away, so nickel rounding will cease to exist as of February 1. Okay, so that goes away. That was just recently changed. As far as a single shelf price, let's talk a little bit about this, and then we'll kind of walk through and give you some examples of what's going on with this. The suppliers across the state of Ohio, and many others, meaning some of the support groups, the lobbyists, even some of the legislators. There's a very active desire to want to have what is referred to as a single shelf price across every single agency across the state of Ohio. And by that, in today's world, because of taxes and counties being different, a bottle of Jack Daniels in your agency here may cost $21.50 out the door, and in your agency down in the other part of the state, it may be $21.95 based on taxes. So I don't mind telling you, I've had multiple calls at times from consumers saying, well, if this is a control state and you set the pricing, why is it different in these agencies? So I explained to them, in most instances, if not all, it's the tax, okay? So it confuses the customer at times, and they think that maybe somebody's playing games, very honestly, with them at the agencies. So we try to educate them to that. So here's where we're going with the shelf price, single shelf price, as we move forward. As I stated, currently the tax and the nickel rounding is included in the shelf price. When you see it on the shelf, and I'll show you an illustration here in a minute. Moving forward, the tax will be calculated at the time of sale. So that's the way we will operate and continue to do the taxing. It'll create some consistency and reduce confusion as we get to the single shelf price tag. It'll be removing the prohibitive rounding requirements, what I just referred to as the nickel rounding. And then we'll be using a phased-in approach to this. And then I will explain to you why we will be using a phased-in approach. Okay, so this is a little bit of a busy slide here. So let's concentrate on the current state. If you look right now in today's world, if you go in any one of the agencies across the network, as far as system changes, none. Price file changes, there will be none. This is the shelf tag in today's world. And if I'm looking at it correctly, I've got to get a little closer. It shows $16.95, okay? That's what it says on the shelf tag in today's world. Where the tax is calculated, all of them are included in the bottle price. Customers see only the final price with the tax included. And so this is what the receipt looks like to some degree. And then you see $16.95. That's what it is in today's world as we speak, okay, across the state. With the transition state where we remove the nickel rounding, okay, no changes in the system, price file, no changes, the nickel rounding is removed. And so now, when you receive the shelf tag, it's going to show $15.84, but it will also show you that with tax, it's $16.91, okay? Sale and other applicable taxes including in the bottle price, customer sees only the final price with tax included. So if you compare this center, which is a transition, $16.91 and $16.95, you see really the only two significant differences is you're 4 cents cheaper because the nickel round's not there, but you do see on the shelf tag what the total price is as well as what the retail price is. February 1st. And the reason we're doing a transition on this, because people have asked the question, well, why don't you just immediately go ahead to the future state and do that? Because if we went to the future state, we would have to go in and do modifications to your system and our system right now that would cost you money and us money, and it's not worthy to do that. So we're removing the nickel rounding piece first, and then when we do the conversion to phase 2, all of that will be taken care of in one fell swoop. So we don't want to go through that exercise of having you to have to go in and make numerous changes into your system to compensate for the shelf tag pricing element of this. So that's the reason for the transition state. Then you've got the future state. We've completed the phase 2 rollout. The price file format and the update process change. The price tag will show $15.84, just as it did here. Sales and other taxes will be calculated at the register. Now, the customer will see the subtotal taxes and final price. So if you look here, you see the subtotal price, the tax, and then, the total price. So it's still $16.91 as it is in this transition. Well, what's going to happen is that the consumer is just going to see that $15.84. So if they go in my agency, they're going to see $15.84. If they go in yours, they're going to see across the entire state. Some people have said, well, that's going to confuse the customer. Well, it may confuse the customer initially. But I can tell you there's been very significant interest and concern that I've actually heard directly come to my office about, well, how come it costs more here and costs less there? So this is something that the industry has been very actively looking for a considerable period of time, and so that's the reason we are moving forward with that. So that's the price tag without tax, single shelf price initiative that we'll be doing as we move forward. Okay. I think the last thing I would like to say to you before we open up with a QA is, you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've had an opportunity to have some significant and some very good engagement with a number of folks across the state in these agencies. And in the time that I've been here, I've had an opportunity, I've talked to some of you directly in this room on a couple of occasions. I've heard a lot of concerns that have been brought forth from folks across the agency enterprise. Very valid concerns, very tough things to listen to at times. Okay, very tough things to listen to at times. But I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is kind of the first step in our process of what I'm responsible for and what my expectations are as I move forward in knowing what I have to be as an enabler to your success. Okay, so I want everybody to understand in this room very clearly that I knowingly and willingly walked into this role, and I know what is expected of me as we move forward. I know the world that we live in. I know the world that you live in. I've tried to tell people, and maybe it doesn't register well, but you know, I understand your world, so multiply that times 466 for me, because I have that responsibility. And I'm going to take it. I'm willingly walking down that path. And I've put together a group of individuals who I know are very dedicated, even to a fault, quite frankly. We spend more time in this probably than you would imagine. I'm not looking for anything other than for you to understand that we are committed to making this right. I can't fix what you're in today. The way I can fix it is I'm having to replace it, okay? Some people have asked, well, why don't you just fix what we've got? It can't be fixed. I'm just saying this to you right here today. It can't be fixed. If it was, or if it could be, we would do it. So understand, please, that you're going to see much more of me and my team. We're going to have many more opportunities for a lot of engagement. I am very serious about our customer service. I'm very serious about making sure we have engagement with these agency businesses and the personnel that run them. And I'm committed to making sure that we do the right thing as we move forward with this. So, thank you for at least the opportunity to sit down and kind of walk you through this presentation. And at this time, I'd like to open it up for anybody who might have any questions.